Welcome back to another episode of That's Business. As the founder of Operational Excellence Consulting, Leah helps small to medium-sized businesses build and optimize their human resource infrastructures. Whether a company needs to improve what they have or start from scratch, she provides practical and strategic solutions that boost effectiveness and build lasting operational foundations. Leah, welcome to the podcast. I'm so pumped to have you on today. Starting off, in HR, did we know growing up we'd want to be in HR? I know I didn't know what HR was when I was growing up.
Yeah, I don't think so. I, honest to goodness, didn't find my path until I was finished with all of my gen eds in university. I remember I actually have a yearbook from kindergarten where it asks, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wanted to be the window worker at McDonald's because I figured that window opening and closing would be a fun job. So that is the earliest memory I have of wanting to be something professional. And then I don't remember having any desires or paths show up for me in middle school or even high school. And I went to college not knowing what in the world I was going to do. I thought, I'm going to take some gen eds and maybe a class or two will stick out that I really love. Well, no. The career counselor reached out to me and said, Leah, you've finished all your gen eds. You need to pick a major now. We'd love to have you for the rest of your life to continue here in our university, but you should probably pick something and start heading in a direction. So I sat down and looked at Oakland University's full list of majors and decided on human resources. And the reason for that, I was sitting here thinking about this for the last couple of days in preparation for this call. Kind of a funny story. I was extremely shy and not talkative back in high school and beforehand. I had a group of 5 friends, and that was really it. I really excelled in school. I had straight A's, kind of a teacher's pet. Lunchtime, I would go in and learn different materials. I was in the math club, so I was coming in before school to take math tests. Really quiet. Didn't plug myself into very many things. And when I saw the curriculum for human resource development, which is the bachelor's degree that I gained from Oakland University, there was presentation and facilitation and organizational behavior and leadership development, all of these things that would require me to get up in front of people, learn to get along with people, learn to work with people who I struggled to work with, do presentations in front of people, which is one of the largest fears in America and one of my fears when I was in school. But I thought, I'm a perfectionist, especially in the area of school. This 4.0 is going to continue. So if I put it on the line, I'm going to make it through this. I'm going to be a more confident, more outgoing individual at the end of this. So that was really the pursuit, or the beginning of the pursuit for my HR degree, was I want to be different than I am now. I want to be more outgoing and make changes and be outspoken. And that's where it began.
Okay, that's so interesting because that could be absolutely terrifying, as you mentioned. So Did you kind of view it as more of a challenge? And I know you said you wanted to improve yourself. Truly optimal lifelong learner is the cool catchphrase everyone likes to say. But was that terrifying? Because I know plenty of professionals hate public speaking now to this day. But what was that kind of mindset going into that and making that decision?
Yeah, I like a challenge. I think I've always liked a challenge. I like pushing the boundaries. I like trying new things. I like learning new things. And that was the beginning of that, I think. I remember in high school going above and beyond on projects. I think one of the classes was geometry, and we had to design a room and then do the size of the room. And then if you were going to paint it, what is the amount of paint that you would need to paint this room? But instead of that, I did that activity. And then I went out to Home Depot and found the color swatches and found the bedding that I wanted and took pictures of it. So this 1-page report turned into a 10-page report that the teacher was like, this isn't at all what we were expecting out of you. I've always gone a little bit above and beyond. I've enjoyed that. And I figured that if I put my grades on the line, being an absolute perfectionist, my grades were super important to me when I was going to school, I'm going to do it. Oh my gosh, was it terrifying to get up in front of everyone. My hands are sweating just thinking about how that felt back in high school. But what I realized was the other 30, 40 people in the classroom were also nervous. differing levels of nervous, but like there were probably half of the other students that were just as nervous as me to get up in front of everyone, to build this presentation, to facilitate this conversation in a structured way. So as I pushed my boundaries, I learned that none of these other people in this room have it 100% either. So we're like trialing and erroring together. We're learning together, and we can let your guard down a little bit.
I want to be you when I grow up, like an overachiever in school and everything. Like, dang, I'm just sitting here in awe of you as someone who's horrific at math, even to this day. I mean, gosh.
Thanks, but I think it was Elon Musk who said, there are people in this world that probably look from the outside and want my life, but boy, is there a tornado. You do not want to live in here. I feel like not to that level of stress and anxiety and success, but like there's a lot of stress and anxiety that goes on in this brain to be the overachiever. And my mom and I joke about some of the school projects that I led and some of the projects that I did, like that painting one. It should have taken you 10 minutes and then you could go out to play, but you took 3 hours, 4 hours and couldn't do anything else. So I'm really fortunate that I had that. It doesn't serve me as well anymore. And I'm learning to like remove parts of that perfectionism from my heart, but it got me to where I am now.
Versus I was the one like, hi, Mom, I have this big project due tomorrow that I haven't started. We later learned I have severe ADHD, but we got it. But it's so interesting, the ways different people think. And like you said, the tornado in our own brains, like looking from the outside perspective inward. So we graduate from OU. What do we do after OU? Do we immediately get into HR? I mean, how did we get on this path?
After I graduated, immediately upon graduating, I had been part of the alternative spring break group at Oakland University for a couple of years. And my best friend started with that organization after graduation, or one of the organizations that we partnered with. So I kind of followed her in that nonprofit route for a little while. And I was leading groups of churches and students on spring break and volunteer groups in North Carolina, rebuilding homes after a hurricane. So I was living in this church and leading teams. And looking back now, I'm like, that really doesn't have to do with HR. But that team leadership and the organization of projects, it might have been a little bit like a foot into the training or leadership area. When I came home, that's when HR started. I started as a recruiter at a manufacturing company, a rubber injection molding company. Real stinky, real hot, 3 giant plants. And they said, Leah, please go sit in that front office and hire people. We need bodies. We need people to run these presses. And I'm hiring people and I'm sending them off to training and they're leaving like lunchtime the second day, or they're not coming back after their first shift. What's happening? What am I doing wrong here? They're doing well in the interview process. Well, little did I know, human resources is not just the recruitment in the front office. It's actually understanding the business and picking the right people for the culture and operations of your business. So I moved my butt out to the plant floor and started learning the operations. And I took on our onboarding program, and I took on safety, and I took on operations support, and I started building relationships with our union leadership and our management leadership, really understanding the business. Now, when I'm talking to potential recruits, I know what you're actually going to do. I took them on a tour of the facility so that they could smell it and they could feel the heat and they could meet some of the press operators who are successful there and learn about what the struggles are and what the fun pieces are about working there. So I spent a lot of time out on the floor tying human resources to real business operations. I'm not just a silo here bringing people in and filing their paperwork. I'm bringing in people who are going to be successful, helping them to be successful, understanding the struggles of the operations team. My people aren't showing up on time. They're not as good at running the press as I need them to be. They're taking too much time off. Learning those issues and supporting a fix to those issues. So now the entire business is my business, not just bringing the individuals in. So I did that. I moved into operations after a couple of years and was the plant manager of one of our plants. So I moved from HR into safety, into operations and inventory and production management. I was there for several years and I absolutely loved it. I was working 70, 80 hours a week. I didn't have very many hobbies. I didn't have very many friends. I was leaving family gatherings so that I could get to work or work third shift because my supervisor was sick. in your 20s, that wasn't really that fun. I had gone to school to build relationships and be more outgoing. And here I am, like using those things inside of work, but not really having much of a life outside of work. So I transitioned after that. But that was really the journey into human resources and then beyond.
That's so interesting. And thinking about the culture too, of you're not just signing someone's paperwork and really like plant floor tours. As someone who comes from manufacturing and automotive myself, it's so huge to just like be transparent with people. And that's what, when someone's interviewing, I'm like, ask what the environment's like get to know it, because that's so key, where I feel a lot of people just don't care, or it's like, whatever, another warm body, on to the next one. Like some very well-known companies here in Metro Detroit do, that shall not be named.
Sure.
But you can tell your passion around this and building relationships and everything of that sort. So we get outside of working 70, 80 hours. What do we do next? I mean, when did this idea for your business come up?
Yeah, there's a quick like interim role between that and moving into consulting. I took on a role with a Chinese logistics company. They're very large in China, finished vehicle distribution. So they owned rail yards and railroads and roll-on, roll-off ships that actually carry vehicles across the ocean, 26 of them. Very large and very successful in Asia. They moved into the US. Leah, this is a piece of paper that says we're a company. Could you please get our people and help us find a location and like help us build this company from scratch? We were actually in the parent company's building here in the US for the first couple of weeks. I had to purchase my own computer on the first day, like from the beginning. So that was establishing a company from scratch. Yes, we kind of had a culture. We kind of had operations set up in China, and I got to learn from some of my Chinese counterparts. But you can't just pick up operations from China and plop them here. There's a lot of legalities around that. We don't do business like that here. So that establishment of who are we going to use for payroll and benefits, and then starting to hire the people, determining, do we need IT first, or do we need accounting first, or do we need operations first? And then hiring those people and then getting them onto the payroll. So there I managed HR, compliance, and operations management. We implemented a lot of process and metrics so that we could become ISO certified. So we went through the ISO certification process for 3 different certifications in the first, I think it was a year in, and we had acquired all 3 of those certifications. So very much standard operations, building our processes, and then following those processes. And after 3 years there, the leadership turned over. All of our leaders were on L1 visas from China. Those L1s expired and they got sucked back up into the parent company, and new leaders came over. And I thought this might be the perfect time for me to part ways. I really loved working with the leaders from that first group. And I thought I'd like to try something different. Again, I was 80 hours a week or 70 hours a week. My heart and soul is in these operations. So I stepped back and took a year off. Actually, just a couple of months after I left that organization, COVID hit. And I thought, what have I done? I'm not going to be able to do anything for the next year. Nobody's hiring. Nobody knows what to do. And I thought, well, infectious disease control policies and employee handbooks and going hybrid, people are going to need help with those things. So I reached out to a consulting firm that I ended up partnering with for several years. They did all the business development work and found the clients that we would work with. And then they would say, hey, consultants, I have this project with this client. Who wants it? And I would raise my hand. Before too long, I had 5 or 6 clients that I was building handbooks, building policies, building trainings, doing recruitment or supporting recruitment, building job descriptions, doing organizational design because they'd lost people during COVID. People had left or they decided that they didn't want to work at that organization anymore. So lots of projects in the consulting world. That was like toe in the water. Do I like consulting? I don't have to do the business development. I don't have to do the business management. I don't have to open an LLC. I don't have to be writing invoices every month. The company does that. Do I like this actual work? I did. I loved it. So I very quickly started my own LinkedIn profile for my company behind the scenes. My mom and I were the only ones that had access to it. And I would send her a note every once in a while, like, how does this look? What are your thoughts on this? So creating my vision, creating my logo. So she and I worked in kind of silence for a little while until somebody reached out to me and said, Leah, I'd like to work with you. I'd like for you to be our HR consultant. So I launched my LinkedIn profile. I launched my LLC and off I went.
What a great story you've had so far. That's so interesting to see if you like the consulting route first instead of just diving into entrepreneurship, because it's a freaking lot. I mean, I know I'm exhausted already and it's Wednesday here, but it's just so crazy that this is such a good point to bring up and to think about, because a lot of people are like 0 to 100, and I'm definitely one of those people, but just seeing how it works out. And I want to take a moment to explain to those that are listening how much of an undertaking it is, because you made it seem no big deal to start this company and bring that branch from China and start somewhere in the United States. I mean, if you've ever worked with any company in another country, completely different. Like you said, how you do business, how different legal things. I mean, in Europe especially, you put your age, your race, your marital status, photo, yes, on your resume. And for the folks we've worked with internationally, I'm like, oh no, you can't do any of that here. So that's just such an undertaking of not only telling your leadership team what's normal in the United States and then how to bring it back, and you just being this badass that's like, heck yeah, I'll figure it out. No big deal. Because that is huge undertaking. And to hire people from the ground up, like, I had to give a moment for that because
thanks.
I mean, you can't see my face right now, but I've been bug-eyed the whole time Leah's been talking because I'm like, wow, that's so much freaking work. Moving forward to talking about your own consultancy. So we launched the business. That had to be terrifying, but that's awesome having your mom which seems like huge supporter on this, obviously, that she's helping you with and all. But how terrifying was that? I know I was terrified when I did it.
Yeah, quite honestly, I don't think if I wouldn't have tested the waters at that consulting firm, I don't think I would have ever broken out and done it on my own. I was with the consulting firm for like a year before I actually launched my LLC. I started operating as operational excellence consulting. So by then I hadn't written an invoice and submitted it, but I'd helped my clients understand it. So I saw how we were billing clients. I saw the relationship, the discovery conversation, and how that went. How do we get to know what a client needs before we start talking about what we can provide them, how we can support them? Building that relationship from scratch. Like, starting a new job is really scary for a lot of people. And in consulting, I do that with every new client. So if I'm taking on clients every 2 months, I'm starting a new job every 2 months. That's really scary. Building your reputation from scratch with every new client. But the more I did it with that consulting firm, the more I reassured myself that you can do this. You are impressive. You are knowledgeable in all of the areas of HR that you're telling people that you are. Those conversations became easier. The prompts that I created to have those conversations became better. So now those conversations are going better. So when it became time to launch on my own, it was just a matter of turning on that switch. It really wasn't so scary. I found a CPA through a friend of mine who is also very type A, slight perfectionist. I knew she was going to refer me someone who she enjoys working with, and therefore I'm going to probably enjoy working with them. That was really the scariest part, was that CPA. How am I going to manage my taxes? How do I set up an S Corp versus an LLC versus a C Corp? Then how do I pay myself in any of these? Like, I can't just use the credit card for my business to go out to a rest. How does that even work? So finding that CPA, that took a huge weight off of my shoulders. Then I talked to several consultants who did what I did a year before or 2 or 3 years before. I just gave them a call and asked, what do you like about consulting? What were like the surprises that you didn't expect out of consulting? What do you struggle with? Who would you say would be successful as an entrepreneur, as a solo business owner? Just quick conversations with them over coffee and even over the phone to understand what I was getting into. So when the time came, it really wasn't that scary, if you can believe it.
I believe it. No, that makes sense. So because what you do spans so much, give us an inside look of what do you typically help your clients achieve? I know we talked about handbook writing, policies and procedures, but what does an HR consultant entail?
So my business, I've boiled down to two kind of prongs or two niches. The first is holistic HR ownership. So an organization loses their HR person for some reason. They go out on leave, they abruptly quit, they have to be terminated. Whatever that looks like, we are currently lacking HR leadership. I come in immediately, learn processes, systems, people, teams, and keep the fort held down. We keep operations running. The longer I'm there, I like to dig in, do an assessment, understand how things are operating right now, maybe make some improvements. If I'm only going to be there a couple of months, maybe I'm not going to make major improvements. I'm going to wait for the next HR person who's there long-term to do those. But typically a stint like that is a year, sometimes maybe a year and a half, 2 years of operations. So I'm really the HR owner. If that's the director of HR or the VP or the CHRO of HR, owning the HR strategy and operations. Then when that time ends, I can hand over a clean and running infrastructure and compliant infrastructure to the HR person we hire. I've been part of that hiring process a couple of times where I'm finding I've been in this culture for a year and a half. I know the team members inside of it. I know the human that they need. So I hire that person, onboard them for a month or so, and then off they go. I'm a phone call away if they need me. But that's kind of the first prong is total HR ownership. I'm owning all the things under the HR umbrella and pretty immediately. The other, which is just as exciting when I was trying to determine which one of these niches I would be, I would miss either one of them if they fell away. So I've just decided that I have two niches. The second one being there is an HR person on the team, whether that's actually a human resource generalist or manager, or sometimes it's an administrative assistant who also does HR, or the operations manager or the CFO who also does HR. I get to be the behind the scenes support to that person. So whether that is they have so many projects on their plate and they can't get them done, I'm behind the scenes writing policies, drafting handbooks, drafting presentations, brainstorming about how we win over the leadership team on this idea. It's really their vision, their strategy, but I'm helping in the background to make sure that they're successful. And sometimes that is an HR person that's overwhelmed. Sometimes it's not an HR person who doesn't know how to do HR yet. It's an HR generalist who needs to step up and become a manager. So I get to do one-on-one coaching and mentorship and upskilling with that person, developing their skills. And then again, I'm a phone call away. If they're managing employee relations and something blows up, hey, we have a sexual harassment claim and I don't know how to manage this, then I get to jump in and support or lead that investigation alongside them or out of the room from them. And then I just get to report back after. So those are kind of the two prongs of my business right now. Holistic management or ownership and coaching, mentoring, upskilling, supporting an HR person behind the scenes, like behind the curtain.
That's so important because that's so unique in what you do, because I feel like HR consulting can be very transactional of like, here, I wrote your handbook, done, versus you actually rolling up your sleeves and getting into it with people that I don't feel a lot of people in your field do. And just that leadership component and just learning about your background, that makes sense how you do this as this holistic approach. Just learning about how you've been your whole career thus far and everything like that. So I'm not surprised to hear any of this. What are some of the biggest myths about HR or what you do that you typically hear, the biggest questions you get asked?
Sure. I think your point about HR consultants being transactional is pretty common and something that I don't like. I was joking with my dad over the weekend about starting a new handbook. He's like, boy, you've written a lot of handbooks in the last couple of years. And yes, but none of them are the same. Because I get to know that company's culture. What kind of language are we using? Are we using we and you, or are we using the company and the employee? Are we getting more casual? Can we use like I'm versus I am? Can we use pictures? Can we use staff pictures? Is this like welcoming environment, or is this very legalese terms? I've worked with a branding agency where there was barely any dress code at all. You come as creatively dressed, as inspired as you feel, you come like that. Whereas in manufacturing or construction, You're required to wear a uniform that the company gives you, and that's that. Versus a mega church that I worked with is very strict on the very conservative, very professional, need to look put together and clean. They're so very different. And if I were to just write a handbook that is very compliant, but nobody wanted to read it, nobody's going to read it. And I'm very interested in building expectations that you can then hold yourself and employees accountable for. How do you have a performance conversation if you didn't set the expectations? Well, if you write a handbook that nobody read and is written in really yucky language, you didn't really set an expectation of behavior. Therefore, you can't hold someone accountable for it. If you write it so that they're going to read it and are excited about it and are excited to follow those instructions, and all of leadership is ready to hold themselves accountable to those expectations, now it gets easier to grow your culture, to grow your people, to succeed your people. So I think that transactional versus a very ingrained, really like the vendor versus partner relationship. Yes, there are some terrific HR vendors out there that will write you a policy, and then you get to do all the work on creating it that fits your culture. I am the one that will also create it to your culture. You don't have to do that piece when you hire me. There's also some language, I saw it on LinkedIn yesterday, about HR being for the company or HR being for the people. And I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, that HR doesn't exist without the business. Like, we can't be 100% for the people fighting all the time, because we have rules and expectations of business in order to keep our business going. But I think that the best organizations create those expectations that both uphold the employee and uphold the company. I was talking to a friend a couple of weeks ago about my technique for writing policies. Is I write the policy, and then I think of it in the head of my very best employee, my favorite employee in the whole world, and then my trickiest employee who's going to try and find every loophole. Does this policy allow for my best employee to make a mistake, have a bad day, be okay, reward them? But does it also keep this one in check, set the expectations for this one? I think that so many organizations, so many handbooks that I read are don't do this and don't do that and refrain from X, Y, and Z. Well, if we shift that language to here's what we expect of our employees, that's terrific language. This is what we expect of all of our humans, and let's all follow that. So I think that HR is very much for the business and the people, and we need to fix the language around it, because I see where people would feel one way or the other. Maybe they've had a bad experience with an individual HR person versus HR as a whole.
That's fair. Such great points. Now, as we wrap this up, Leah, what advice do you have for listeners?
Oh, my word. I think in the areas that we've talked about, one of the things that I don't know that we dug into it very much, but it's something that is on my mind again and again, so I'm going to share it. If something remotely interests you, try it. I was back in high school being that shy human who wishes that she would have tried shop class because it was available. But I was like, oh no, that would be weird for a girl to take shop class. Oh, what? I could have been in the garage with my dad working on our cars. Like, that would have been so cool. Or we had an anatomy class in high school, and I heard from several people that's really hard and no one ever gets A's. So I stayed away from it. Like, I had the opportunity to dissect things and learn about the actual body, and I was too scared because maybe I'll get a B. I stayed away from things because of fear, and I'm not even sure the actual fears. Like, I can't pinpoint the fear of XYZ, but there was just so much fear in my heart growing up. And now that fear is going away. I attend so many crazy things because I just want to try it. I go birding with my mom. I go to the Highland Games and listen to bagpipes. And it's called hurling the haggis. I raised my hand and I signed up and I hurled the haggis, which is like a meatball wrapped in duct tape. Anyway, like the craziest things, I'm doing them because there's a slight bit of interest and I could have a lot of fun versus missing out on a whole lot. So that's my thought for the day, is if you like something or you think you might be interested in something, you think you might like something, just try it. Jump out of your comfort zone and try it.
Amen to that. Say yes to opportunities. That's awesome. Leah, you have been an absolute delight to have on this podcast. And for those of you listening, if you want to work with Leah or follow her, head to the show notes and tune in again next week for another episode of That's Business.